Welcome to the latest Arabian Business podcast. I am Eddie Taylor, and we have a very special one today. Not only are we being filmed, for the first time in a while certainly, but we have in the studio one of the best podcasters around. I'm delighted to be joined by Michaela Peterson, broadcaster, CEO, lifestyle and diet guru, and perhaps most well known for being the daughter of Canadian academic professor and culture war lightning rod, Jordan Peterson. Thank you so much for coming in to see us today, Michaela.
Thanks for inviting me. That was quite the intro.
Well, I mean, you know, I've been listening to a lot of your podcasts recently, and they're fascinating, and some of the ground that you cover and the different topics that you talk about. And we were delighted that you're in Dubai and you come to see us. So the first question is, what brings you to Dubai?
So I had a rough couple of years with family health, just terrible luck and family health problems. And so I've been with my parents, like really close with my parents for the last couple of years. And so now that everybody's better, I was like, I need a break. So there was that. And then Canada's, especially where I am, Toronto, Ontario, is the most locked down place in North America right now. So right now there's a stay-at-home mandate, so you're supposed to stay in your house. And it's been like that since November. And I was going stark raving mad. And I had COVID last July. I'm not that concerned. It wasn't that bad for me. I'm not that concerned about getting it. And I was like, I need to get out of here. And I've never been to Dubai before. And I have the opportunity because I can just move my studio from place to place. So I thought, why not come check it out?
What have you found out about it here? I've been checking out some of your Instagram posts, and you came up with quite a nice kind of summation of one of your first sort of days. I think you've been here a couple of days, and you were talking about, wow, it's kind of not what I thought it was like. What have been your impressions so far?
So I haven't done as much as I wanted to do because I've been catching up with work that I've missed because of family health stuff. It was like, now I have some time, I can get all this stuff done. So I've been a bit of a workaholic, but it's much less conservative than I was expecting. And I'd heard that it wasn't that conservative compared to other areas in the Middle East, but it's much less conservative than I was expecting. There are a lot of attractive people here. I don't know if it's like where I am, but there are a lot of attractive people here. There's a ton of money.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I've never been somewhere that was so new either. I looked at pictures of Dubai in 2000 and then to 2020. It's insane how much growth there is here. It's absurd. It kind of makes me feel like I've come from like a small village into a city, and I live in the biggest city in Canada. So
and it's literally in front of your eyes, that growth. I mean, that's what I find absolutely staggering, that people that moved here you talk to people that have moved here in the 70s and 80s. You know, my father-in-law came here in the early 70s, and like the whole place is just completely transformed in what feels like the click of a finger. And it's amazing that, you know, that someone coming from Canada will see that, will see that evolution. It's funny actually, because I was actually thinking about Dubai and your dad, and in some ways, Dubai is the Jordan Peterson of cities, I think, in the sense that everyone's got an opinion on it, but the actual reality is miles away from everyone's perception. Would you think that's kind of a fair summation?
I don't think I've ever had my dad compared to a city, but yeah, it's different than I was expecting. But it's also, you know, I was expecting someplace with money and with lots of people with money, and so it's kind of like that. It vaguely reminds me of the size of Moscow, how like the streets are really wide, the buildings are really big, they're way bigger than anything in Canada, but it's like shinier and new.
And warmer.
And people are super polite. People are ridiculously polite.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Like in a kind of, they apologise for everything and pleases and thank yous.
Not like Canadian polite.
Not Canadian nice.
Like, yeah, because that's, I don't know what kind of polite that is, but not that. Just polite. Everyone's been super polite, so that's really nice too.
It's really refreshing, isn't it? So, we are going to talk a little bit about your dad a bit later on in this. You mentioned the health issues before. It's great to see him on your podcast again. So he's okay now, right? Everything's fine, and he's kind of doing well.
Yeah, he's doing much, much better. He's put aside some time each day for self-care now, because before it was just go, 12 hours. And so now he's walking, he's getting in the sun, he's lifting weights, he's dancing a bit. So things are pretty good. He still has a full schedule, and he's, doing some sort of media appearance or recording 6 days a week. So it's still a lot, but at least he has some time set aside for self-care. And the other thing that's happened recently that made him feel a lot better is he was diagnosed with severe sleep apnea,
Right.
which is something that we didn't know. And he's probably had it for at least like a number of years. And he was waking up like 30 times an hour. So he wasn't getting any restorative sleep. So when the doctor gave him like a CPAP machine, his mood and his well-being improved in like 2 days, like dramatically. So wish we'd figured that out earlier.
So, you've worked for him. You don't work as much with him as you did, right? You've sort of moved away from managing his social media in quite the way that you did. Is that fair?
That is not true.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm still very involved. I've been trying to organize everything so that I can move away because I have my own podcast and I'm writing a book and I have a lot going on. But I also really like that. So I'm trying to organize it so I can hire somebody to kind of at least manage things so that I don't have to do a lot of the like managing, right? I want to be maybe a step away from that anyway. But at the moment, no, I'm swamped with his stuff. Like 90% of my time is managing his brand.
So that's an interesting challenge for you as you have a professional relationship, but you're also his daughter and he's had these health challenges. You just must be like, Dad, slow down, stop, take a breath. Don't do that speaking tour. Don't do that podcast or whatever it is.
In 2018, when I was managing him, then I had to slow him down a lot because he was being way overbooked. But now he's more aware of how much he can do. And honestly, if he slows down too much, he gets bored. Right. And then he doesn't feel well.
And then you got your mum going, please get him to do something. Get him out of the house, please, anything, right? And that kind of is a nice segue into the first kind of main topic we're talking about, which is the book that you're writing. You said you're writing a book and that's why you want to kind of devote a bit more time and create more time for yourself to actually finish this thing. Tell us about what the book is and what its mission is.
Okay. So I've been writing this book for like my entire life. It's been taking a while. One of the ways I had a very severe autoimmune disorder, juvenile idiopathic arthritis. I ended up with a hip and ankle replacement. I was very, very ill. And one of the things that really helped me through it was keeping a journal. And so this book is basically my life up until now. And it's kind of funny to be writing a memoir at 29, but my life has been very strange. So it's my experience having an autoimmune disorder, putting that into remission with diet, the experience of helping my dad with whatever he's doing, the experience going through the last couple of years of like health disaster after disaster. And I think part of it is just I need to get this out of me so I can stop thinking about it because I've been focusing on writing this since I was about 19. And then I've been like, okay, I'll end it when I'm 27. And then my 28th year was just absolutely insane. And I was like, well, that should fit in there too. But now that all the health drama mainly is over, and I think this is a good time to end it. So my goal is to get it out before next year.
Amazing. And when they say idiopathic, what that essentially means, that's a posh way of saying no one really can decide what this thing is, right?
Yeah, you go in and you go, my joints are really swollen and sore. And that's what arthritis means, right? And then they just stick idiopathic in front of it, which is just like unknown joint swelling, which is what you went in to figure out in the first place, right? So it's idiopathic arthritis. Like, yeah, I know. Like, is there anything you can do? But yeah, so juvenile idiopathic arthritis, I've had symptoms since I was 2. I was diagnosed when I was 7. They had no idea what was going on. I was on immune suppressants. I was on 7 different medications, and I still ended up with a hip and ankle replacement when I was 17. So they just didn't understand.
So that must have been a cause of incredible, concern for your parents, because they're probably seeing their child struggling at that age where you can't quite communicate what it is that's wrong with you, and you can't explain what the problem is, and they're taking you to doctors and they can't sort of figure it out. So, I mean, in those sort of, 4 to 10 kind of age, those kind of like really formative years for any young person, what was life like? What was the daily challenges and struggles for you?
Before I was diagnosed, it was difficult because I was coming home from school and I was crying. And they're like, well, why are you crying? Like, are you not sleeping? Like, are you being bad? Right. I think that's a stage before realizing people are sick. You're like, well, are you just misbehaving? When I was walking really slowly. Right. And they're like, well, are you dragging your feet? Like, what's going on? So I'm like mopey, I'm dragging my feet. And it wasn't until I started walking up the stairs 1 foot at a time. So I go 1 foot and then the other foot. Yeah. They're like, okay, Like, what is going on? And it took a number of years to actually be diagnosed because at the time, juvenile idiopathic arthritis was very rare for kids. And mine was extremely severe. But it was also the kind that didn't make your joints swell too much. So it wasn't that obvious. So before I was diagnosed, there was a lot of confusion and I think fear and a little bit of anger. I think anything that scares parents too, they're like, oh my God, like, what do I do here? After I was diagnosed, I was put on this immune suppressant a couple of years later, and my symptoms reversed in like 3 months over the summer. I went from almost being wheelchair bound, like if we went to the zoo or anything, I'd be in a wheelchair, to playing soccer.
Wow.
With this immune suppressant. So it's this injectable immune suppressant called Enbrel. So then, I don't know, we just kind of lived with it. I had like...
And there were no side effects with that? There were no kind of problems with
yeah.
that? Oh, there were?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, it did... My joints were better at that time, although obviously it didn't work for very long.
Right.
But the side effect was a suppressed immune system. So every time I went to school, I got bronchitis and then I'd get pneumonia by January. So I had bronchitis every year until grade 11.
Wow.
So yeah, it wasn't fun. There was a lot of health struggles when I was little and I was medicated to try and, control my symptoms. But there's only so much medication can do. So it was hard, especially on my mom. It was hard.
And that's essentially one of the key topics of the book is how you evolved almost out of the traditional medical environment into your own sort of self-help approach to your own health. And talk to me a little bit about that journey and where the turning point was and how you ended up in a place where you're off meds and you're feeling better.
Yeah, okay. So I had my hip and ankle done when I was 17. And at that point, I was also on SSRIs for severe depression with like hypomanic episodes, so bipolar type 2. When I was 22, I was diagnosed with idiopathic hypersomnia, which is just you're sleeping all the time and we're not sure why.
I bet the last word you wanted to hear at that point was idiopathic. I'm like,
oh my God. Like hypersomnia is literally like sleeping too much.
Right.
I was like, again?
Right.
Thank you, guys. Right. But I got put on Adderall, and at that point I was on 7 different medications that I'd kind of figured out myself, and I could think well enough that I was like, okay, I've got to figure out something because I've been in the medical system for 15 years and it's not working. My wrist was extremely sore and I started getting this blistering rash.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I can do arthritis. I guess I can do bipolar. I can do hypersomnia, but I cannot do this rash on top of all of it. It's too much. Like if people can see it on the outside, it's too much. Yeah. It's like having a visible disease is definitely worse than having an invisible disease. So at that point, I had gone to doctors and they basically said they didn't know what this rash was. And I was like, okay, I'm going to...
Again.
Yeah, no, again.
You have an idiopathic rash. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I had a couple of them suggest that I was scratching myself, like making it happen. And I was like, okay. So I had this rash was having trouble healing. And I was like, now my skin isn't healing. I'm going to die. This is really not, like my joints are disintegrating. My skin isn't healing. I'm going to die. So I went back to school for biomedical science. I thought maybe I need, to get a PhD, go into immunology or microbiology, just try and figure out what's going on. So
that was study as a way of almost directly self-referential. This wasn't
a
career that you thought, well, I want to go.
No.
This was for me. Yeah.
Yeah. This was for me. So I started that. But I started researching, this rash, trying to figure out what this rash was. And I finally found it. And it took like 6 months to identify this rash. And it was called dermatitis herpetiformis. And it's a rash that people with celiac disease can get.
Right.
And so that's the autoimmune disorder caused by gluten. And I thought, oh my God, like maybe. So I started researching celiac disease and I saw that celiac disease can couple with other autoimmune disorders. And I was like, maybe I just have celiac disease. And that's why I had arthritis, right? So I cut out gluten and I probably improved by 10%. It was like a little bit like my skin started healing. I was like, interesting. So about 4 months later, I thought, you know what, I'll do, actually my mom brought me to a naturopath and they gave me this list of foods I should eat. And I looked at the list and I thought that makes no sense. Like this is this doesn't make any sense. I'm going to come up with my own list. And I thought, what are people allergic to? And I thought, eggs, dairy, grains, soy. I cut out everything I could think of that I thought maybe somebody could be allergic to. And I ended up with basically meat, certain like pitted fruit, and greens, and a certain root vegetables like parsnips, sweet potatoes. And I went down to that diet for a month, and my skin healed. I lost 5 pounds, but I went down 3 pant sizes. So I had been like bloated without even knowing. And my arthritis started to feel better. And so I started getting rid of my medications. And at this point, I'd been in communication with my doctors, but they were like, no, there's no way diet has anything to do with your health. So they were not on board. So I started removing the medications myself. And anyway,
that seems a very strange conclusion for a doctor to come to say your diet and your health aren't related. That seems an odd equation that they would have said that they would have come up with.
Well, you'd think that, but when you go to medical school, you don't get very much education in nutrition. You get like 3 or 4 hours, and it's all for the food pyramid. And you're told that these autoimmune disorders or mood disorders don't have anything to do with your lifestyle, that you have a chemical imbalance or bad luck, and that you can treat it with medication. And thank God we have something to treat it with. But that's it.
So what's the diet that you kind of you ended up on?
So I was on this really limited paleo diet, and then I stopped taking my SSRIs because I really wasn't depressed anymore. For the first time in my entire life, I could think and I didn't feel depressed anymore. And at the time, I didn't realize that SSRIs can cause dependence and withdrawal. So, and like I said, I wasn't really being monitored. So I got off them in a period of 2 weeks. And 2 weeks later, I introduced soy because I was trying to reintroduce foods into my diet. And I had this horrific autoimmune reaction where my arthritis came back, my rash came back, and I had what the medical profession would call visual disturbances. So I hallucinated when I reintroduced soy. And I thought, okay, I went off of all my meds and now I'm crazy because that didn't used to happen before. And so I went back to my diet and I just waited. And it took me like 3.5 weeks to recover from this. And I wrote down all my symptoms every day and measured them out of 10. So like, how bad is the arthritis? How bad is the sleep? How's your digestion? How's your mood? Like everything out of 10. And I just monitored it and waited. And about 3.5 weeks later, it went away. And I was like, what on earth was that? And over the next year, I kept trying to reintroduce foods and I kept having exactly the same immune response. And I went to immunologists to try and talk to them and they were just like, that's not a thing. Right. Well, it's like, well, it is, but right. I guess I'm not talking to you guys. But I ended up with just meat. So I cut out fruit and I went to meat and greens. And I was trying to get rid of this depression I had after stopping SSRIs, which I now know was SSRI withdrawal. And I went to meat and greens for about a year. And then I was like, you know what? I know that meat doesn't bug me. Maybe if I do meat for a month and reintroduce things, I can identify what's causing this like psychiatric response. And I've actually been on that since December 2017.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have to supplement other dietary needs, whether it's vitamins or whether it's carbs or anything like that, your body needs just to kind of function? Have you had to substitute anything or?
I haven't. Right. I've been eating salt. For the first year, all I ate was salt and beef. Right. And that was it. And then I introduced lamb and now I can have chicken. I can have fish. I drink tea. So, and I used to not be able to drink tea. That used to give me arthritis. So I'm slowly healing. But some of the controversy I've had online is like, oh, she's selling this all meat diet, which is impossible to make any money that way. So I wouldn't recommend that for anyone who's trying to make money. But
unless you work for the Argentina Tourist Board or something like that, come try our beef.
That's true.
But the thing is, you're not promoting this as a panacea for everybody. You're saying this is my journey and this is my solution. You're not sort of going out there shouting from the rooftop saying, everybody drop greens and cereals and gluten, that's your path to freedom. You're just sort of telling people, this is how I fixed myself.
Yeah. So that's what I've been saying. This is what worked for me. I have also been saying that I've been in contact with other people this has worked for. So I think that's where the criticism comes from. Right. But, most people who even attempt the diet are people who have been in the medical system for 15 years and they're on a bunch of medications and nothing has worked, because nobody who isn't in that situation wants to cut everything from their diet because it's like socially isolating. It's not like I didn't like salad. I really liked salad, but
and socially inhibiting, going out for dinner, going around to your friend's house for dinner, it's going to be an inhibitor on you just because you're always constantly mindful of what's being put in front of you.
Yeah, or paranoid about it.
Yeah.
One of the nice things about Dubai actually is there's meat everywhere here. Like you can get lamb everywhere. And the way from the restaurants I've been to, it's very clean. Like in North America, and especially in America, the quality of the food there is really terrible. They add a whole bunch of preservatives. Like you have no idea what's going on. And here I've talked to, and they're like, yeah, it's, lamb and salt and pepper and olive oil. I'm like, wow, you have to ask for that specifically in North America. So pretty good here.
Is that kind of it for you diet-wise, or can you get to a point where you're reintroducing other things as you go? Have you been sort of experimenting, going, well, hey, that worked. I'm going to have a splash of milk in my tea, or I'm going to have an apple, but then other things manifest themselves and you go, okay, no, I better leave that alone.
So I didn't do anything for 2.5 years because I was so happy to not be depressed mainly, but also not have arthritis. So I didn't try anything. And then I was like, well, I have a lot of people who are watching me, and the goal of this diet is to eliminate what's bugging you, help you heal, and then allow you to reintroduce slowly so that you're like mindful of what you're eating and you can say, hey, that didn't make me feel good, but this is fine. So that's the goal is heal, reintroduce. I tried that last summer, but there were a whole bunch of confounding factors that happened and I ended up not feeling good. And so I went back to meat. I was very stressed because I was in and out of hospitals with my dad. I got COVID. So that pretty much just wrecks whatever food test you're doing. And I was like, you know what? I'm too stressed right now. I'll wait till I'm in a good place and then slowly reintroduce. But yeah, that's the goal. And I'd probably start with, something easy, like super easy, like baby food, mashed up, like cooked carrots. Like I'm not going to go full blown into a piece of cake. That's never going to happen. But yeah, the goal is to reintroduce.
It's not just diet though, is it? Have there been other kind of tools and practices and policies that you've been putting into your daily lifestyle to help you maintain your health and keep those symptoms at bay, whether it's kind of, yoga or meditation or mindfulness or something?
So I would say 95 or 99% of it was diet. But once I got off the medications and once I started feeling better, then I was like, oh, you know what? I have energy to exercise. Exercise makes me feel way better. But when I was sick on a bunch of medications, exercise didn't make any difference. I was so done naturally that the extra energy I was spending exercising just made me feel even worse, right? So I exercise now. So I lift weights 3 times a week, and that makes me feel great. Ideally, that would be every day, but at the moment it's not. I've used meditation, which really helps, especially, my brain's going 100 miles an hour all the time, and it's good to slow that down sometimes. Tonight, I'm going to a studio to do a cold plunge sauna and Wim Hof breathing.
Right. So explain the last one to me.
Wim Hof breathing?
Yeah, no idea.
Okay, so Wim Hof is this Dutch Iceman. So he's climbed up Mount Everest in shorts, and he's done feats that no one thought the human body could do. Swimming under ice water for way too long. He can hold his breath for 4 minutes. Like, these are things that don't make sense, but he's also been patient enough to be monitored by the scientific community. So there are studies done on him. And he has this way of breathing, which is, it's almost you breathe all the way in, all the way out fairly quickly. And it kind of makes you lightheaded, but it allows you to hold your breath afterwards. And his theory is it stresses your body a little bit and kind of snaps you back into focus. And it seems to work for people. Like, he's got a lot of claims.
Have you tried it already? Or is this going to be the
tried it.
Oh, you've done it already.
I've tried it, yeah. It's kind of uncomfortable.
Right.
He does cold showers. Like,
right.
he's the cold shower guy.
Right.
But, so yes. I mean, once my mind was blown about diet fixing my autoimmune disorder, I was like, what else do I know that's wrong? Like, I just lost faith in everything. So, I don't know. I'm a little bit out there right now. But It's
But
fun.
and so the book is going to be, it's obviously a kind of a diarized journey of your, of your life up to this point, and your health struggles and how you came through them. Is there elements of self-help to the readers to say, guys, you can be in control of your own life, you can be in control of your own health? If you're stuck in the medical system, there are ways and pathways out. Is that kind of an important message for you to get across?
Yeah, the goal, I'm not explicitly telling people, do this and you will be cured. That's not the goal, but the goal is, if you're headed in a direction and you keep like banging your head against the wall in that direction and it's not working, like if you've been sick for 15 years and you keep trying the same thing, there are other ways. And hopefully what it'll show people is there really isn't anybody who, you get some help sometimes from maybe from family, but there isn't anyone who's going to help you. Like you've got to do it yourself, and you have the ability to do that, even if you've been dealt a terrible hand of cards. And some people are going to have a much harder time. Like some people have easier lives, and that's just how it is. But unfortunately, life is not fair in that way, and you can still dig your way out of it. So, take responsibility for that and try working. I've named it Could Be Worse.
Could be worse. I was going to say, have you found a name for it yet? But could be worse.
Could be worse.
So what then, is there kind of an overarching lesson to all of that for you? Are you someone at the age of 29 that looks back and go, thank goodness I found my path out of this while I'm still young? Or do you look back with an element of regret going, my goodness, I gave away 25 years to, ill health when, other people were running around and, playing sports and going to prom and all that stuff, and I kind of felt a bit of a prisoner. Is it a mixture of both, or is it?
It's most definitely a mixture of both. Like, I'm trying to turn it into just gratitude as much as I can. But I mean, I've like my left leg is pretty damaged from the ankle replacement. I would not recommend having an ankle replacement if you can avoid it. And so every time I go to the gym, and it hurts a certain way, I'm like, gee, like if I had known this, or if somebody had known this when I was maybe even 16, maybe I could have avoided joint replacements, because you can't go back from that. So yeah, I've got I definitely have some resentment against the medical system, which I'm trying to work through, and some anger, but I also can't believe that I don't have that anymore, because I was told from the age of 7 that I was going to have that forever. And both things, the bipolar and the arthritis, and I don't have either of them. So yeah, it goes back and forth being like, wow, that's amazing. And ugh.
And I bet your parents had guilt as well. Like, why couldn't we crack this? Why couldn't we figure this out earlier? Or
I think they're okay. My mom had a bit of anger because she'd been like, I remember her talking to my doctor and being like, is there any way that we can change her diet? And she was always trying to get me to stop eating sugar. But I mean, it wasn't enough, right? My diet's so extreme now that it's no wonder that nobody could figure it out. So I'm not mad at them about it, because nobody was going to figure this out. I can't believe I figured it out.
Yeah, it wasn't for the want of trying on anyone's part. They were trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm more annoyed at, people scoffing, I guess, at my mom for being like, diet? Ha, no. When it was purely diet. So it's kind of tough, but I think mostly we're thankful that that's not a problem anymore.
It must give you a lot of tools, and we'll come on to the next sort of section of the conversation now around this. It must have given you a lot of tools to cope with life generally and be resilient and have kind of a mental strength that probably nothing is that insurmountable when you've overcome a challenge that extreme, that the kind of the vagaries of the modern world, whether it's social media or a broadcasting career and all of the shots that people take at you and stuff like that, that just kind of must feel a bit like nothing, right?
It gives a very, very low bar for I guess you could say stress or suffering, because I have suffered quite a bit. The hip and ankle replacement and arthritis and all that stuff, that causes quite a bit of suffering. So yeah, I would say part of what allowed me to start looking at my body and my diseases with a bit of space was this anger I had tapped into. And I guess you could call it resilience, but it was like, no, I'm not letting this is not how my life is going to go. Yeah, it was defiance, because it was like my body was dying, and I was like, no, it's not. Like, you're not doing this, right? If I'm going to either fix this or kill myself trying, right? And that was my mindset when I was 23, and in 8 months I put it into remission, which was just like
amazing.
Yeah, so I'm working on an app now with my dad. He has a number of, I guess you could call them, he probably doesn't want them referred to it like this, but you could call them like self-help products. So he has an personality test and something called self-authoring, which allows people to write out their past, present, and future, kind of work through it and identify flaws and set goals, which is, it's a great program. But we're working on a resiliency app, which is going to hopefully let people identify where the problems in their life are. So like work, family, health, whatever else. So it'll help you identify what your problems are and try and turn them into goals instead of looking at them as problems. So you don't know, like you have no aim, like look at what's going on that's wrong, and then that's your aim, fix that. So
amazing. So what stage of development is that in? And who are doing the inputs as well? Like, is it you and your dad together? Is there external?
There's more people. There's more people. There's a developing team. My dad's grad student, this guy named Victor, who's my good friend and dad's grad student, he's doing a lot of it. Andre, my husband's involved in the development as well. So it's kind of a group project, but we're pretty excited and we're hoping for 3 months. But to tell you the truth, that seems
ambitious.
That seems ambitious, yeah.
But maybe this year.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it'll be this year, and we're trying to develop a kind of a community element too, so that people who are trying to work towards their goals have other people who can keep them accountable in the group. So I think hopefully it'll be good for people.
So kind of give me a sample of the UX. What's going to work if I open this app and I'm having a terrible day or I've got a big problem? What's the kind of the pathway through?
Okay, so first is going to lead you down a route that helps you identify what your problems are. So you have, I can't remember all 10 sections, but like I said, there's like health, family, work. So there's those. And so you'll press that, and then it'll kind of split into more categories that lets you identify exactly what's going on. And then you make a plan. So it'll help you make a plan. That part we're still getting worked out, and we're trying to make sure the user experience is good because I'm super picky about badly done things. Like everything out there is so app oriented that it has to be easy. So it gets complicated enough that we're still working through that. So that's just the figuring out what kind of goals you have. And we're still trying to figure out exactly how to create the social element. That is going to be a bit more tricky.
Yeah. Milestones maybe, or.
Yeah, milestones would work. We have sections on, how to make these goals. So journaling, we're going to incorporate a bit of, mindfulness. So it's going to be good. But we're in the very early stages. We just started working on it once my dad got better. So it's been it's kind of 6 weeks for me, a month for him. So we're early on.
I kind of feel we need this though. When we have a section on Arabian Business that's called Resilience, because we felt that as we were coming out of COVID, we represent and reflect the working communities of the UAE and the wider Middle East. Everything that we talk about is the economic landscape and its businesses, and that has to include how businesses operate and how HR departments function and how employees interact with their companies. And we were hearing more and more and more about the challenges that people faced in COVID, whether it was remote working, whether it was dealing with the culture of an organization, whether it was having an empathetic leadership to understand people's challenges. So we developed this section called Resilience, so to make it acceptable and fine for people to talk about the issues and the challenges that they're facing in order that they can be overcome. Is this are you feeling from your podcasts and from your conversations that there is a real need for these kind of tools?
Yeah, I think people are really good at helping themselves if they're told that they're able to. And I think a large problem in our society is that sometimes people take away that power. So, oppression is a really big thing right now. And the problem with telling people they're oppressed is it takes away their power. It's like, oh no, you're stuck in this little box of whatever oppression you're in, and there's really nothing you can do about it because it's society. And so then you're like, well, I guess I'm screwed, right? And part of the problems I have with the with elements of the mainstream medical system is you go like, look how sick I am. And they go, oh, there's really nothing you can do about it, but thank God you have us. And then if they can't help, who helps? Because your power has been taken away. So yeah. And then you mentioned COVID. COVID has been completely devastating for people's mental health. And I mean, here you guys have the vaccine rollout. It's sunny, so people are outside. But in certain places in North America, like people have been in their house for almost a year.
And where I'm from, in the north of England, which
Yeah,
is
exactly.
similar climate. It's great. I mean, imagine it gets dark at 4 o'clock and doesn't
Yeah.
get light till 9 a.m. and you've been at home
Yeah.
all of that time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, grueling.
Grueling, yeah. That's
kind of a grind of the daily grind. I speak to people back home and it's just like, I need to get out.
yeah. It's sad. So
And that's and there's other elements of that of the mental health challenges. Yeah, you're locked at home and you're isolated and you can't see friends and family and loved ones. There's also economic impact. People haven't got, if you combine that with like, I'm at home and I can't go out and I can't provide for myself and my family. I mean, it's just like a powder keg of emotion, I'd have thought.
Yeah. So people need some help and encouragement. And I think, some people especially have a really hard time right now, but telling them that there are kind of trying to calm them down and getting them to think a path or a potential plan for improving their life can at least give people some hope. And that's enough to keep some people around, right?
And some tools, I think a lot of people have felt challenges and stresses that perhaps they were never aware of before. You'd hear about a mental health discussion and kind of go, oh, well, that doesn't affect me. I'm fine. I'm strong. I understand where I am. But I think the last 18 months maybe has kind of opened people's eyes to what mental health challenges actually are, because stresses will get on top of you. You will be thinking thoughts that you may have not thought before. You may be not feeling as though you're in complete control of your emotions. And I think that giving people pathways out of this has never been more needed. So has the app got a name yet? Are you still working on that?
We're working on that. Right now we're considering AIM. Yeah, so we might stick with that. But I'm hoping that giving people a community, somebody they can be accountable to, and then ways they can implement their plan that maybe they haven't thought of could help people. I mean, just the community element is big.
Do you think there's also an issue of modern society in which people kind of open a door to a professional in a clinic or a surgery or a medical professional or anything like that, or even a therapist, and go, fix me? Is there an element of that where people don't take enough possession of their own health or their own well-being? Well, it's like, I'm paying for you, fix me. Like they take their car to a garage.
Yeah. And I mean, it's easier that way, right? If you're dealing with a problem, especially a disease or something or a mental illness, and you have no idea where to start, and you have somebody you can pay who says they'll help you, that's way easier than figuring it out by yourself. Now, it turns out that's not necessarily easier in the long run, especially if they don't end up helping you and just saying they can help you. But I can understand why people would take that. And we're taught that you can go out and find someone who will solve your problems for you. But in my experience anyway, that isn't true. So if you've been, like I said, going in one direction for a really long time and you're still not better, it might just be on you, which is scary, but people are pretty powerful.
This could actually lead to sort of consultancy work for you as well. I could see you going into workplaces and sort of trying to figure out, consulting with HR departments, going, right, you got to be empathetic over here. You've got to draw a line over there. You could kind of, you have to give your employees tools to get out of this stuff, Is that something that's maybe on the cards?
Oh man, I don't know. Consulting people, I don't know if I'm quite there yet. Maybe down the road. I like the app idea, and I don't really get along with. I'm kind of disagreeable. I don't know if I could go into an HR department and be like,
disagreeable.
I am. I'm just being nice because I'm on camera. Yeah.
One part of resilience and one part of mental health that's obviously kind of exploded in the last sort of 4 or 5 years is social media, and one of the things of resilience people are talking about is just switch it off, turn off the phone, close down the app. And it's interesting from someone like yourself who is essentially a social media personality. People are tuning into your podcasts on YouTube. You run your father's social media accounts. How do you deal with that balance? I mean, you must have encountered so many conversations and criticisms and abuse from running your dad's social media accounts and
Oh, yeah.
now your personal accounts yourselves. I mean, how do you kind of stay, above the fray, shall we say?
Yeah, well, especially when my dad was really sick, because I took him out of the medical system in North America and I brought him to Russia, and you know how that looks from the outside. People were like, "You're killing your dad," which was really not helpful at the time because my dad was really sick. I was like, and so that was mentally horrible because I was like, if this doesn't go well, the entire world is going to hate me. It's not only that like my dad might be gone, but it, like also what am I going to do? Change my name and move? So that was tough. But there are some tricks you can do. So first, you can block people and mute people. It's your social media. If someone you don't know or somebody you know is being rude and like ruining your day, just block them.
That's the first thing. That's actually my rule in my own Twitter feed.
Twitter especially.
Any abuse from someone I don't know that's like just jumped on and said something, you don't deserve my time.
No.
You don't deserve my engagement. You don't even deserve my outrage or anger. Just go.
Yeah,
bye.
yeah. And like at the beginning when I was first using social media, I was like, well, is that like censorship? So I had that. But like, no, this is your sanity. So you like make your feeds into feeds that make you feel good, not feeds that make you feel bad. If you're following news stations or more political figures, and all they're doing is saying like fear mongering, and it makes you angry when you see that stuff, probably better to not follow that. Like I've tried to shift my social media into I'm watching people work out and I'm looking at like mindfulness coaches or self-improvement. Like all of my people are like self-improvement gurus that just or tweet out things that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I should implement that in my own life. So try and change your social media to that. I would also recommend not using it first thing in the morning because if you wake up and you instantly look at your inbox and you have like 30 unread emails and you're just like, oh my God, I'm so behind as soon as you wake up. So it turns out if you limit the time you spend doing it, it doesn't limit productivity. So I'm bad at this. These are not easy shifts to make, but it makes me feel better if I kind of shift and start my morning a little bit late so that I can spend time with my kid, meditate and exercise. And then I can dive into work. And I'm so much more productive that way that it makes up for the, 2 hours I didn't do that in the morning.
We live very noisy lives, don't we, when we think about it? I was actually complaining to my wife about, I feel my brain is clogged a lot of the time just because there's so much information and things dueling for my attention that, sometimes I just kind of want a bit of serenity and a bit of calm. Yet we're also really, really bad at knowing how to actually put that into practice. Like put the phone down, close Twitter, close Instagram, close that.
It's addictive.
Yeah.
It's really
it's
hard
designed
to put
to be addictive.
Yeah,
let's be honest.
so it's hard to put down. But yeah, it's good for your mental health if you put it down, or you at least give yourself a time frame in which you're allowed to look at it, and then you don't. And it goes for your inbox as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all addictive.
You have a daughter, right? That's going to be a very interesting challenge as well, is how parents and I think it's probably with girls more than boys. I'm not saying exclusively, but I do think that it's a particular challenge for parents of girls is to manage that social media interaction with the rest of the world in terms of the values they have, in terms of the mirror they hold up to themselves, in terms of the people that they have as role models and look up to, and how they are shaped by social media. Is it something that you would be like, I just don't want to run it until she's like 18? Or is it something, it's going to happen, she's a digital native, so we've just got to basically manage it as best I can?
So I've thought about this a lot because especially Instagram for women, like all the photos of other women are edited. So nothing on there is real, especially celebrities or, there's some, but usually they're edited. And that is hard for me to deal with. And if it's hard for me to deal with, I can't imagine what it's like being a 13-year-old girl now. Unfortunately, you can't block it because if you just shield your kid from social media, they're going to be a social pariah, right? Like there is an element of status that comes with social media. So I think I'm just going to have to be brutally honest about, hey, pictures are edited. This is addictive, okay? Like what you're seeing isn't true. And hopefully people who grow up with it can learn, but you're going to have to be pretty resilient to figure out how to use social media without it destroying your life as a teenage girl.
Yeah, and I think that's the trick as well, particularly on Instagram, is it sort of almost inspires a sense of anxiety because you're not living the life that was captured in that one frame. But
Yeah, the
I
one
always
frame.
tell my friends, yeah, it looks great. That person is sitting on a hammock overlooking the Caribbean, but the 10 seconds before that shot was taken, she might have been arguing with somebody, or her kid might have been running away 10 seconds afterwards. So that idyllic kind of snapshot, it's not real.
Yeah.
None of it is real. It's curated. It's
Yeah.
been posted for an effect. And we have to sort of constantly remind people that this is essentially fake. It's a
Oh
fake
yeah.
world.
Yeah. I do that. I mean, I do it on my own account. I had, so I took my dad was like, we transferred him from a hospital to a hospital, and we took a private plane because he literally couldn't use a normal plane, right? This was a life and death situation. So we took a private plane. And then we took another one to go from Florida to Serbia to go to a clinic in Serbia. And it was a private plane. And one of my friends was like, "You're on a private flight. You've got to take a picture there." So I have a picture of myself on a plane, but I'm transporting my dad, who's like almost dying, to a hospital. So you have no idea what's going on in people's lives.
Completely strips away the context of, oh, look at her swanning around on a private jet. And you're like going, hang on, guys.
Like I'm
There's
just holding down a
story.
panic attack. Yeah.
Would you rather be a parent now, or a parent in your dad's time raising you? Which is what, early 90s now, right?
Early 90s?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I feel like just because of social media and screens, I think it might have been a bit easier back then. I also think the further you go back, the more of a neighborhood element there is. I know my parents tried really hard to get us to grow up in a neighborhood, so we played on the streets with other kids. And so maybe I'm just biased seeing it that way, but I'm living in a condo now. I mean, for COVID, no one wants to be a parent during COVID. Like she's 3.5 years old. No one in Toronto would play with her. They wouldn't have any play dates. So you have all these kids in their developmental age growing up and they don't have any friends. So that was the other reason I wanted to come here, was because I was like, Scarlett needs to see some kids. Like this isn't good. So yeah, especially given COVID and social media, I'd probably choose the 90s.
Yeah.
In Canada.
Yeah. Your dad talks a lot about parenting in books and in talks and things like that. And he talks about it with a lot of clarity. And I actually enjoyed, he was at the American Enterprise Institute interview, and he was talking about principal goal is to raise a kid that's not dislikable. And I thought that was such a clear kind of phrase. And that was and he put it in such a way that you go, well, yeah, absolutely. And only parents can really look at that and kind of go, that's a sage lesson. Did he practice what he preached in your case when you hear him talk about parenting and the goals of parenting? Was basically that a reflection of how you were brought up?
Well, what do you think? Do you like me?
I mean, listen, I think so, yeah. But when you hear him talk about parenting, you're like, hang on a minute, Dad. No, that's not what you did. Or has he been pretty kind of consistent?
No, he's been pretty consistent. Like people have asked if he's the same, when he does his lectures as he is at home. And yes.
That's good.
Yes. So what you're seeing is what he's actually like.
What do you disagree on, you and your dad?
Well, part of the reason I'm in charge of the business is he doesn't advocate on his behalf very well. He's too agreeable, right? And so he'll, when I first started working for him, I noticed that he was working with people who were charging above industry standard fees. And he was going, yeah, well, I've worked with them for a long time. Like, I was like, I don't care. Like, I get it, but are they going to lower their fees so that they're not screwing you over? No. Okay. Well, then we're not going to work with them anymore. So does that have anything to do with the question you just asked?
A little bit. Well, that's more about approach rather than, I'm thinking maybe more from a political point of view or anything like that.
Okay.
Do you have how he sort of,
yeah.
He's known for obviously views that are considered contentious, whether they are or not's another argument. But do you kind of have around the dinner table have kind of quite heated debates about matters of the moment, or are you reasonably in lockstep with things?
We've had. Okay, so when he first started kind of speaking out, there was a law in Canada that kind of dictated what words you could use, and it was surrounding a trans law, and if it had been any other law, he would have had the same issue. It was just the fact that they were dictating what words to use. And at the time I was like, this
Pronoun thing, isn't
the
it?
pronoun
It's like
things,
the he,
yeah.
him, her thing,
G.
depending on
It was the G.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that was the main one. There was like
Right.
these other words, and he was like, I'm not doing that. And at the time I was like, that seems like an extreme reaction to this. It's like, maybe like that seems like an extreme reaction. However, seeing how things have gone, especially COVID seems to just have sped everything up. I would say we're pretty in line. I think he is more interested in the political side of things, and I like the COVID lockdown aside. I'm not really interested in politics,
Right.
and he's a little bit more interested.
Right.
But pretty aligned.
Talking about politics, and you say you're not particularly interested in politics, but I feel as though we're in an interesting moment in North America, and that's kind of spreading throughout what we would call the Western world. And there seems to be this incredible polarization between people, that we're now in these tribal camps and we can't talk to each other.
Yeah.
We can't healthily disagree. We can't debate. We can't exchange views in a way without being accused of being a Nazi or a communist or a fascist enabler or something like that. Kind of, how do you see that? And is there a way out of that from your perspective? Or are we, what's it going to take to kind of lessen this tension?
So I did say I'm not particularly interested in politics, but that part actually does interest me. And I talk about that quite a bit on my podcast because it's not just political, it's spreading into like any type of idea that you have that's different from somebody. They'll have an emotional response to you instead of just being like, that's interesting, maybe I could learn something. Is there a way out? I'm pretty skeptical. Like my dad is more optimistic. He's like, you know what? Particularly America, like they've had protests before, they've had wars, and things have kind of come back together. I haven't seen that because I'm younger. So this looks pretty bad to me. One of my good friends just left Minneapolis because of the rioting.
Right.
So I think like one of the things I'm doing on my podcast, for whatever that's worth, is I have this type of podcast that's called Opposing Views, where I'll talk about some contentious subject and bring on somebody from, I guess you could say, the right and the left, or opposites on this topic, and just talk to them, ask them the same questions, an hour each, and then put it up for people to see. And then people can see on both sides. They can see that there are other people who have a completely different opinion. And I think that people get stuck in these echo chambers, especially given social media, particularly Twitter. They get stuck in these echo chambers where they're like, everyone thinks like me. And then they come across somebody who doesn't, and they're like, well, you're wrong,
You're the
because
enemy.
everyone else thinks like me.
And it's not a case of I disagree, let's move on. It's like, I disagree and you need to be taken down and shut up and banished from the world. And that's what I find very, very strange about this moment, where it's nothing is less progressive than eliminating someone from the public sphere for having a different view. And I think that's what I find very challenging about this moment, is where from both sides of the political spectrum, you've got the, they call it cancel culture. I think that's a bit of a strange, convoluted term. But from both sides of the spectrum, you have people that don't want to even hear what the other person has to say. And I think that's a very dangerous moment for people who are interested in exchange of ideas. And that essentially is what our culture and civilization is built on.
Yeah, and that's what keeps people communicating with each other. I mean, if you stop communicating with each other, you're going to have a war, right? People are going to separate completely. You have to have some communication. One of the funny things with this podcast is I have a very, very difficult time finding anybody who's on the more liberal side to come on and talk, which is
by association.
Super weird. So I guess if I thought about it logically, I would assume that they're paranoid about being framed in a certain way, but I'm not editing any of these. They have the questions beforehand. I send them the questions beforehand. Some of them won't come on because they'll say, oh, well, I don't want to give that person a platform. So I've had, one person here and they're like, I don't like that person. I'm not using my audience to help him get views. So a lot of this cancel culture is, well, we're not canceling them, but we're not allowing them to have a platform anymore. Which is because everything's so social media oriented right now, that is canceling somebody. But I'm having a really hard time getting guests on from, I would say, more liberal points of view, which I'm totally open to hearing because I'm not
fixed. Yeah.
I'm not fixed. No.
Do you think Biden's going to help? I mean, and what I mean by that is he's somebody who, I know you're Canadian, not American, but America does seem to set the tone, if you like, for how we kind of engage.
Yeah.
It seems to me that he's uniquely capable of lowering the temperature, even if just because he's not particularly controversial in anything, and he's an avuncular figure that everyone seems to genuinely like. Is this a moment where we start to wind that back?
I really hope so. Again, I'm more pessimistic than my dad. My dad's like, yeah, he's got a good opportunity. Like, this could work because he's not, like, he's more of a Democrat right now, but he didn't always have those views. However, I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm concerned that particularly the Democrats in America are so surrounded by more left-leaning people that they have the same echo chamber problem where they're like, oh yeah, everyone thinks this way. It's just these weird, like, conservatives that no one really takes seriously anyway. So it depends. I have no idea. I really hope he tries to calm things down, but from being more, I would probably classify myself, I don't know, center or center right, seeing more of the kind of right-wing people, they don't seem calmer.
Right.
And the left-wing people also don't seem calmer. So, I mean, we're in the middle of COVID, so who knows, but hopefully.
He's probably going to be in a unique position where he's going to be disliked from both sides because he's not, the right wing's going to hate him just because he's not one of them, and then the left wing going to hate him because he's not left wing enough, which seems to be a unique part of the democratic platform. But I just, as I say, I just think that there's a room for there needs to be a room for good, honest, healthy debate and discussion, because that's the only way we learn anything is through dialogue and dialect and stuff like that. So I did listen to one of your podcasts the other day, and one, I found it absolutely fascinating when you had the mafia boss and the policeman talking to each other.
That was cool.
That was a really amazing podcast, just talking about how they come from two different completely places and end up roughly kind of agreeing with each other, which was kind of strange in a weird way. And I thought it was very brave to compare gang culture and police culture, but there you go. I thought that was an interesting
I was wondering how that would go,
And the other one I really loved was the guy, and I should remember his name, and I'm really sorry. The one that was talking about the Wall Street and the Reddit groups and Robin Hood.
You liked him.
I thought he was amazing. Yeah,
Jamie Rogozinski.
Rogozinski. There we go. Thank you very much. I should have written that down. I just thought I learned so much in a very, very short period of time, and I thought that was a good skill of your point of view to ask questions that just allowed him to explain in a very A to Z fashion what this whole thing's all about.
Yeah, that was interesting. These little subcultures that you don't know I didn't know anything about that.
Right.
It's very interesting. And an hour is a short. I'm not really a podcast listener. So I figure, like, how long can people listen? Probably like 15 minutes, but an hour seems like long enough that you can get the gist of what somebody
We'll figure it out. We'll see who's still at this point. We'll test people. Who's got this far in the podcast. So what's kind of the mission of the podcast, and what more have you got coming up? And what's the name so we can tell people where they can check it out?
So it's the Michaela Peterson podcast, and it's on YouTube in video form and basically anywhere you watch or listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I release episodes twice a week, and the goal is to just talk to interesting people and see how they've become successful. So really what I'm doing is trying to talk to people I can learn from and be like, how did you get to be that rich? Or how did you get to be that happy? Like, what exactly did you do? Okay, maybe I can implement some of those in my life. So it's kind of a selfish podcast, but I'm talking to a lot of people who own businesses, CEOs, doctors who are more in the alternative health industry. And then my favorite episodes are these opposing views formats where I talk to two different people with opposing views. And I think those are really interesting.
Anything cool coming up that you can kind of give us a teaser on?
I have one with Russell Peters and Dad.
Amazing.
That was
He
fun.
comes here a lot, Russell Peters. He's kind of a friend of Dubai.
Really?
Yeah.
That does not surprise me at all. But that's going to be fun. I'm going to have Tim Dillon on. He's a pretty big comedian right now. I like talking to comedians too. I think those are probably the ones I'm most looking forward to. I tried to have a COVID opposing views episode, but I couldn't get people to agree to come
agree
on
to
it.
disagree.
They're like, it's
They
too,
couldn't even agree
it's
to
too
disagree.
contentious right now. Yeah.
Well, we've got to wrap this up, sadly, Michaela. I've thoroughly enjoyed having you on. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. Many thanks for stopping by, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Arabian Business Podcast. Please subscribe and look out for more podcasts in the near future. Cheers.